Okay, everyone. So welcome to another CavanKerry Press reading. This is a very important reading today because we're celebrating not only the release of But I Still Have My Fingerprints, this beautiful, beautiful book by Dianne Silvestri, but we are also celebrating the 1-year book anniversary of Uncertain Acrobats by Rebecca Hart Olander, which I'm super, super proud to present. Both of these women are such precious, precious beings, and their personalities are only matched by how wonderful and heartfelt and lovely that their work is. And we are going to have a treat tonight because we're going to be able to listen to both of them. And then after we listen to both of them, we are going to have a Q&A session where everyone could kind of ask some questions via the chat. So please think about anything beautiful you hear tonight. If you hear anything beautiful and you are so compelled to let us know, please put those beautiful lines in the chat. And if you have any questions that you're pondering about either But I Still Have My Fingerprints or Uncertain Acrobats, please also put that in the chat. And we will be sure to answer your question during the time we have the conversation at the end of this reading. I will ask that everyone please remain on mute out of respect to the authors for our reading. And before we start that reading, where we're going to celebrate Rebecca's book first with a reading, and then after that, we will celebrate Dianne with her book launch for this book that's finally into the world. I did want to start with a brief land acknowledgement. And to talk about the land acknowledgement, I'm bringing on our social media coordinator, Tamara Alquaisi-Coleman. Hey, Tamara.
Hello. Hello. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So as Dimitri said, my name is Tamara Alquaisi-Coleman, and I'm the social media coordinator for CavanKerry Press. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the latest in CavanKerry's series of virtual readings, celebrating our new and forthcoming releases, and of course, the 1-year anniversary of Uncertain Acrobats. Before the reading begins, we want to take a moment to acknowledge that the land we occupy in Bergen County, New Jersey, belongs to the Lenni Lenape people. We honor their history. We cannot function in our work as art activists nor offer a safe space for all writers without understanding the struggle for Indigenous rights. Additionally, we join arts organizations across the country in celebrating Native American Heritage Month and in honoring the crucial role of Native authors in the development of American literature and culture. We encourage each of you to support a more equitable and inclusive publishing industry by purchasing their work wherever it is published, not just in November, but always. Now I will hand it back to our marketing and communications director, Dimitri Reyes, to introduce tonight's readers. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Thank you for that. So yeah, we're actually going to begin with Rebecca Hart Olander with Uncertain Acrobats, which is still available to purchase from our website. Listen, all of you might have been, and I'm going to sound like a QVC commercial, and I'm going to be QVCing this kind of stuff all night. A lot of you have been trying to get things from Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and other places, and it's been hard to get things through Amazon because of distribution and latenesses and all that. This book, if you order it from our website, which Tamara or Gabe, please put that in the chat box below, we will ship this within a day to you. And you will get this in the next couple of days after that. So we are really encouraging you to purchase from the website because we're so excited to actually give you these books. And like, look at how beautiful these things are. Like, we got French flaps, right? How many people are doing the whole pretty French flaps thing? It's a like a velvety kind of cover. Like, if you're a book person, and all of us are really book people, right? This is going to be a great book for you to get. So let me talk a bit about Becky for a second. She grew up in Eastern Massachusetts between Gloucester and Boston. She earned a BA from Hampshire College, an MAT in English from Smith College, and an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts. Her poetry, book reviews, and collaborative writing and collage have appeared widely in journals and anthologies. A chapbook, Dressing the Wounds, was released in 2019 by Dancing Girl Press. Rebecca lives in Western Massachusetts, where she teaches writing at Westfield State University and is the editor and director of Perugia Press, a nonprofit feminist press publishing first and second full-length books of poetry by women. Everyone, please welcome Rebecca Hart Olander.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, and everyone here from the CavanKerry team, Dana and Gabe and Tamara. And Dianne, I'm so pleased to be reading with you tonight and celebrating your book, helping to welcome you to the CavanKerry family, which it it is. It's just been a lovely community to be part of this past year. This is a beautiful book. I'm just so proud that my book is out with this press. So happy to celebrate it, but especially you tonight, Dianne, and at the beginning of the journey for you. So I'm going to read 10 poems tonight. I am going to time myself, and I'll cut one out if it's too much, but I did time myself before. I'm trying to read things I haven't read almost exclusively for a CavanKerry reading, but 2 of them are going to be ones that I read, one at one reading and one at another reading last year, but most of them are brand new. And this book, I'll just say a quick something about the book. It's dedicated to my father. It's about him and his life and our relationship and his dying time from cancer in 2012. He died, it will be 10 years ago in December. And so that leaving the world time and then the grieving time after, in the most immediate time after his death. So the book is in 3 sections. The first part is more life and relationship, and the middle part is dying, and the third part is grieving. And I'll start with some poems from the first section. The first one I'll read is called Origins. From a place of bird feeders he came, of glass straws for hummingbirds, of the concrete feet of St. Francis beneath his robe in the backyard. From breakfast nook and kitchen pass-through, serrated grapefruit spoons and maraschino cherries, from Bakelite and Lazy Susan, pink sink, Dixie cups, pixie haircuts. From a totem pole bought in Banff, from beards, mustaches and loafers, 45s, smoking and tennis. From Connecticut, the middle of the family chain, after an uncontainable big sister, but before a soft-spoken baby brother and the 3 children who died. He took the role of peacemaker, their father at the table head, carving a dead bird every November with pride. And later, his father bewildered in a chair on wheels, rails around the toilet, an adjustable bed. From cancer, he came. He came from a teacher, his mother's grade book and her lips left on crushed cigarettes. From hearts, bridge and canasta, crossword puzzles and a den, TV trays, sectionals, and bronze. From a childhood where his father made him and his siblings rewrap their presents after opening them, so the scene would retain a perfect gleam through epiphany. On the shelf under the window, a little wooden bird with eggs inside her that could be taken out and played with. In his room, a bag of marbles. From Treasure Island he came. From slide carousels and Adirondack summers, lamb and mint jelly under taxidermy and antler racks. From tab and birch beer, a cooler like an Airstream camper. His father, dressed as Father Time, waiting on the porch for his sister's date to bring her home. He came from college, the same one as his father before him, from fraternity. He was Omar Sharif in Dr. Zhivago, handsome. He came from acoustic guitar, ponytail, and patched bell-bottoms. From a first marriage to a girl he loved that lasted just 3 years. He got off the school bus he and my mother were riding with friends toward Colorado, deciding to go instead to divinity school. They only made Chicago, but he had a vision, so they hitched back east with dried lentils and $2 in pocket. It was 1970. On my birth certificate the following year, under father of child, he claimed magician as usual occupation. For industry or business, he is enshrined as worldwide magician on my government document. By then, he was working a hotline for troubled teens, first stint as an English teacher, and ministerial dreams behind him. Trays of slides, ice bucket, brass fireplace poker, encyclopedia volumes, beefaroni chess tournament, Krishnamurti, Woodstock. I made the mistake most of us make. I didn't ask enough questions. When was their time with all the laughing? And this one is later set in Boston, where my father and stepmother and little brothers lived, and I lived sometimes. Trigger. Growing up, I watched the tape turn yellow on the New Yorker cartoon hung on the fridge. Eventually so accustomed to the picture, I stopped looking at it. Under ambered strips, a man sat up in bed, clutching his stomach, his wife asleep beside him. His eyes shifted to the kitchen, where an icebox said, The text read, "Ask not for whom the refrigerator hums. It hums for thee." Do you all remember this too? Those of you still alive? My brother who once dressed in capes and crowns, the other not then old enough to read. My stepmother, perhaps the one to cut it out and save it back in November 1980. Or was it you, gone father, recognizing in yourself that wide awake man, always craving something in the night, your appetite so strong for life and all its delights? Maybe you chuckled over it together, stuck it there where it became not only image, but trigger, returning you to that morning of pie for breakfast after Thanksgiving, oilskin cloth printed with black cherries, pushing the magazine toward the one you love, anticipating familiar laughter. I didn't get then the allusion to the tolling bell, or how our minds run wild with all we want, enough to wake us up from sleeping. I only knew you knew something I didn't, and that made me feel young and green about the world, which I was. And speaking of green about the world, we're going to move into my adolescence. This is a poem called College Cathexis, and this was, you'll see a time where I stormed around being just out of and on the edge of adolescence still. College Cathexis. My girlfriends all seemed to hate their fathers. I too wanted to burn with righteous fire. Stoking remnant embers, how mine could have been better, I smoldered in my dorm room, carefully curated with posters of Rosie the Riveter and Frida's unapologetic eyebrow, listening to Liz Phair's Exile and Guyville on repeat. Fathers represented patriarchy and restrictions, chain link fence, stuffed shirts, scarecrows. Some fathers were active volcanoes, and after eruption, their daughters dressed in ashes were like Pompeii, held static in their becoming. That running girl caught in pyroclastic flows, that child forever frozen in her small chair. Thinking of my father that way, I fanned my modest disappointments to try and catch a spark. It didn't take. I doused the spluttering flame, let time transform that old terrain. And this next poem is sort of about one of those things I tried to be really disappointed about with my father, who was human, but was a very good man and good father. And this was a poem that I wrote while I was editing the book. Something came up during the process of writing the book, and actually I was working on the poem that I just read to you, and it was in a really different form. And through working and revising that piece, which is the piece I worked the hardest on with Baron Wormser, the editor, I ended up writing this other piece, which said something that the other one wasn't saying, and I hadn't yet said. So at one point when I was a little girl, I asked my father to hug me more. I grew up with a very physically affectionate mother, and because I lived with my father part-time, I think he wasn't necessarily very physically affectionate, and I confused that with maybe that he didn't love me. And I talked to her about that, and she said, why don't you just ask him? So I did. My Aesop. It goes like this. Father Bear was gone. Mother Bear was the one entering through the swinging door. Surprise, a blazing cake in her paws. When he was in the story, he wore a vest and a very smart hat. He smoked a pipe, laughed a deep huff of a laugh. As a cub, I asked him to please hug me more. Could his distance mean he didn't care, since Mother Bear cradled me close in our den? Little Ursula, I wore my heart on my fur. Once a yearling, newly on my own, I circled the familiar territory of that wound, as if he hadn't offered me a remedy. But that wasn't the lesson. When I asked, he answered. Pride set aside, the ways of his kind. He wrapped his shaggy arms around me and held on. And that's true, except for the part where he's a bear, and I am too. But he just didn't get mad and instead started hugging me more. So we're going to move into the middle section of the book. And this is a poem I wrote right before my birthday, the year that my dad was sick. So it was 10 years ago. And he got sick again he had had a lung removed and lived for about 4 years, and then got sick again in November of 2012. Find alternate routes is what the digital road sign flashed at me as I drove downtown. As if there is another path through this thicket. As if we are sleeping beauties and can be kissed out of our darkness. As if we can cut away kudzu and it will stop letting down its insidious hair. As if we can uproot bittersweet and it will cease its blood red choking of the lilacs. As if you will be unchanged, robust like you were when I was 7 and we crouched together in mirrored pose, mimicking the stance of breaking into a run. Me in my burnt orange corduroy jumpsuit, hair parted to the side and clasped with a barrette, my blue Keds beside your running sneakers, still lace tight from the hometown 5K you raced in your sweaty, sun-worn baseball cap, your skin browned from being in the world. Early fall, 1979, and every beautiful muscle showed in your legs and your flashing smile. Oh, damn this route you are racing now. All those other games gone. Your detour paved with brittle prognosis, coasting swells, nothing like the adrenaline that used to course through, making you feel every inch a man. The cancer is back. We blend bone meal with soil at the base of rose bushes, tendering roots with the dust of other lives. It is this life I want, we seem to say, with each swath of dead perennials we clear, making way for what we assume will come. But there is nothing to mix into this unspeakable void. The cells are doing their dire multiplying, and we already fed them all our best poison. Can you stand to enter those changing rooms again? The metallic pull across of the striped curtain, the flimsy wraparound of a backwards robe. Couldn't you go on seeking cyber chess domination, tying up pork loins stuffed with apricots and sage, wearing the vest you bought in Santa Fe until all the buttons fall off. No more pinpoint tattoos. Your single lung has only just learned to live alone. This is a poem that also references Santa Fe and Red Cloud, which is the place from which Willa Cather came, and she was a favorite author of my father's. And this is a poem I tried writing in my father's voice from the center section of the book. Red Cloud. I swallowed the dye, crushed pills, applesauce. I thanked the angel who changes the sheets and knocks before entering. When she shaved me, everyone thought I was unaware, but I knew the smell, the lather, the brisk blade scratching along my throat. I breached then in my black pond, perked to her touch, a warm towel afterward, tingling pores. Sons debate bacon on pizza. Daughter's pen scratches paper, noting my care. And wife weeps in my ear, whispering her love. TV hums in the corner, but I'm done with Patriots now, with Rondo's missed 3-pointers. My runner's heart keeps time, but my heart isn't in it. Drugs help. And Paul Simon. Matchbook, smoky ski lodge, circle of stuffed wolves. Old camp song about creatures in God's choir, me the badger, gray and full of sighs, talking to myself like the porcupine. Flickering reels, 10th birthday bike, Sister Hillary's dark eyes, Yaz signed ball. The thread. What is the thread? I am not who I was last week, office organizing, phoning BB, singing birthday. Unable to say, remember Santa Fe? Adobe apartment, and we dropped our bags and stayed. Sun hats and heaps of oranges and all the time ahead of us. She rubs my hand, my face, as if to tug me up, pull me back to air, to light, make me say, my dove, say the grave won't stop my care, but I pray, Zeus, hurl your lightning at my heart. Make a crater I can topple into. Summer ruler, storm king, bolt me with your wonder remedy, your fatal shaft. Dear ones, when you see those bleached bone skulls, you'll have me. And when you turn Cather's pages, you'll find me in Red Cloud, the simple house, wide yellow seas outside, split rail fence, and the little graveyard's faded, sloping stones. Okay, I am gonna skip one. I'm gonna read 2 more though. This is a short one, Ascension. At the base of the mountain, in a hollow filled with flowers never seen, the burro waits with your bags strapped on his sloping back. A shawl of sun drapes your shoulders, a finished book by your side, a packed pipe, a full wineskin, soft leather boots laced tightly for the climb, and in the distance, your dreams still catching up with you, raising dust clouds as they go, the scent of lemons and cinnamon, curl of coffee rising from a cup, rain clouds holding steady in a sky about to unlock the future, delighting itself without you. And I'm just going to close with one from the last section. My heaven would be studded with fathers. My father in his blue and white striped bathing suit, holding me by the ankles, my hair sweeping the Good Harbor sand. My father tossing quarters into the toll basket as we crossed the Tobin Bridge toward his house for the weekend. My father quizzing me on the singers of Motown radio tunes while we drive and on my times tables. My father stuffed into a student desk on parent night, defending my efforts to my algebra teacher. My father inhaling a joint, then passing it my way on the back steps of a fading purple house in Dorchester. My father in a fisherman's sweater, holding my swaddled firstborn with a look on his face I'd never seen. My father reading Her Frog and Toad and looking like Frog or Toad himself in his tweed jacket with patches on the elbows. My father reading a prayer to me and my beloved at our wedding, wearing seersucker, happy to bring God into the room. My father rendered speechless on a gurney, clutching my hand in an anonymous corner at Mass General that I won't forget the whiteness of. My father in the woods, placing stones on top of other stones, then back in the woods to see who's added to his cairns, then not in the woods at all, then in the woods everywhere. My father in the woods like stars in the ether, spangling everything in a wash of light. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, thank you so much. I miss hearing you read. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And the musicality in this book is like unmatched. So thank you so much for that. I can't wait for a Q&A session. And thank you for being so gracious and taking us through the trajectory of the book by breaking it up. Thank you. So we'll beam you out now, but we'll be beaming you back in very shortly. Everyone, this book, the link for this book is going to be in the chat. So you should check this out. You know, the holidays are coming. My Christmas tree is up. Your Christmas tree will be up soon. And this book fits in a box. It fits in a present very nicely. So this is something that you could definitely consider. Thank you, Rebecca. See you soon. All right. So now we're going to bring in Dianne Silvestri to celebrate the release of her book. Dianne Silvestri, MD, is a graduate of Butler University and Indiana University School of Medicine. She was associate professor of dermatology at UMass Chan Medical School until leukemia forced her retirement. She has studied poetry at workshops including Tupelo, Poem Works, and Coleraine, and authored the chapbook Necessary Sentiments. Her poems have appeared in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Barrow Street, the Main Street Rag, and Naugatuck River Review, among others. She is a past Pushcart Prize nominee and co-founder and leader of the Morris Poetry Group in Massachusetts. The mother of 4 and grandmother of 7, she enjoys gardening and beautiful ballroom dancing with her husband. You can learn more about Dianne and her writing at her new, wonderfully done website, diannesilvestri.com. Ladies and gents, I welcome Dianne Silvestri.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, and thank you all the rest of you CavanKerry Press folks, of whom I'm now a part. So thank you to Mara and Dana and Gabe somewhere there. So my book, which I'm about to read to you from, is beautifully made by CavanKerry Press. So thank you for that. And Rebecca, I just want to thank you for the gift you've given me tonight. Your poems are just exquisite with their images and your vulnerable heart. So thank you. At the start of my book is when my life was turned upside down or derailed, as it were, from what my career had been. And I went through the jangling curtain rings that, Rebecca, you just called to mind again, all night in the emergency room before admission, and ultimately my diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia. The first poem I'm going to read to you is called Cosmic Questions. I learned of a man in a Bosnian town who, rather than rant and curse, purchased steel plates for his roof after scientists verified the 6th meteor strike in 3 years. Experts cannot explain this homing of galactic trash to a tiny terrestrial target. nor do they understand why one of my white blood cells turned killer. One of the first drugs I received in chemo is the bright red, notorious Donorubicin, which is the title of the next poem. You save lives, you take them. Your methods I memorized from the thick blue textbook, a cruelty still vivid. You're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I have no choice. My tears cannot bargain. I clutch my son's hand, beg God for mercy as the nurse clocks her push on the big barrel plunger to send your scourge tunneling to my core to assassinate all proliferating cells. Oh, crimson savage, leave me alive. So it was a complete transformation. The next poem is entitled Doctor as Patient. In medical school, we all imagined catching infirmities as we learned them. Addison's, myxedema, every headache a brain tumor. I'm now awkwardly beached, my white coat surrendered, modesty breached by the gaping leak of the extra large blue gown as students file in. I agreed to be their mannequin. Let them interview me, smile and survey, palpate, percuss, and auscultate me, because I recall my young stethoscope on early test runs. Now ripped from my role as teaching physician, I body double as teaching case, naked in a snow globe. The next poem is about my husband, loving me during this time. Skullcap. Ron pushes the wheelchair to the gift shop for me to find a skullcap, something soft to cushion the bare shock and warm my head at night. He tells me I look beautiful, even half hidden by the pleated mask, and says, I won't need a wig. The hair will grow back soon enough, but adds, I should try on that coral checked sun hat. It would be cute this summer. The chemo room that I was in for a month is a lonely place, but I found a friend. This is a poem for George. I've named this special IV pole George, my constant companion in empty hours through chemo and the eternal waiting. He tirelessly suspends fluid balloons and supports pumps that purr and sizzle like dizzy bees, pushing mysteries into me. George is strong to steady my step and sometimes winks his gleam at my gloom. He doesn't object if I push him away when I need some space. Infrequently, his tires accidentally roll over the 3 trailing tubes that hitch us together. He tries to fit his 6-wheeled stance beside the toilet in my narrow bathroom. He's become a friend, even if twice he nipped my ankle. But I understand my anger slips out sometimes too. So chemo did give me a remission, but my doctor told me that my only chance not to have a relapse and succumb, basically, was to have a bone marrow biopsy, or what we now term a stem cell transplant. The next poem is Bone Marrow Biopsy. Days dragged past since the needle pressed into my core, its suction gurgling. Experts weigh if my disease is banished, dissect the slush and extract its spicules, like when we tweezed owl pellets in 5th grade to untangle the remnants of a mouse, a bat, a small bird with claws preserved, submitted the disarticulated tally logged from the owl's expectorated dross, sobering evidence of life sacrificed in natural selection. I wonder if the news will relegate me to join the world's refuse. The wait is so long. I touch my hip, still tender from the doctor's drill. A stem cell transplant is best done if you have a matched donor. I was not allowed to know who my donor was. A match was found, but I wrote this while I still wondered. I knew only he was a 28-year-old man. Dear 28-year-old man, how did you get the idea to be a marrow donor? What prompted you to sign to let them swab your cheek? Why did you take a chance somewhere there might be a me? How did you feel when they called to warn you could be a match? Did they ask if you still meant it, still wanted to give your cells? How did you react when your blood confirmed your chromosome for immunity was a picture of the totem of mine, 10 stripes in perfect match? Did you know about the shots that would drive your bones to ache to make newborn cells to be siphoned, sifted, and shipped on ice to me, longing, ready, and waiting? Whoever you are, will your sacrifice be worthwhile? It's weird having someone else's cells in you, keeping you alive. And I guess all transplant recipients must feel that way or go through that. Here's my version, or one of my many versions, chimera. The dictionary defines this noun, this is the epitaph. The dictionary defines this noun as chimera number 1, an organism with tissues of diverse genetic composition. 2, a fanciful or nearly impossible idea. There's a man in my life, nesting in caverns in my bones, pulsing his excursions and navigating forks in my veins, almost as if he owns them. The blood in there I call mine, but it wears his signature. I pray this union will work, but worry about a mutiny. I must find a way to persuade the new guy to be my ally. God, help the two of me to get along. And there's a lot of waiting and roller coaster riding as the graft versus host happens and infections and so on. So I was sitting in my hospital bed a lot and watching through the windows. This is one of those poems, seated on my hospital bed. My 7th floor window vibrates. The room throbs in crescendo as a rescue helicopter stitches a curved seam across the sky, bound for Children's Hospital. Balanced like a dragonfly, it settles on the roof. As the blades stretch to slow, curled jumpsuits spring free, deliver a cot, coax it up to stand on baby deer legs, urge it toward a door. My mind draws in close, imagining the injured child or fevered unconscious body, the nearby ashen parents. I blink. My self-pity has vanished. This poem is about graft versus host, which is a disorder with a lot of different symptoms that can occur when the transplanted material begins to recognize the host self as foreign. So the good guy becomes the enemy, so to speak. Graft versus host. I am now an implosion. My invited tenant, disruptive. He inflates my skin to foam, burns my mouth's membranes, sands my blinking, rifles my gut, splots my hide like a leopard's. I never imagined such a question, but just who is in control? Whose breath is on my tongue? When I clean beneath my fingernails, whose cells do I quarry? The next poem was written during one of the hard times. This is addressed to my husband. Advance directive. If I don't come home from the light blue walls of this place, it's not that I want to abandon you to do everything alone. But don't forget to replace my voice with yours at home on the answering machine. Please take the gourmet cooking class you always said you wanted. And if you resume dance lessons, pretend it is I waltzing with you. Early on, when I got out of hospital one of these times, this poem came. Choosing the Right Pumpkin, Farm Stand, Natick, Massachusetts. You there, you are the one. You moon face like those of us who've been taking too much prednisone for too long. Nubby scar across your forehead, dried abrasion stubbling your chin. You are the wounded, strong soul. I will give you eyes to find me likewise. And one of the trips back into the hospital brought this one, MRI. De-jeweled, I lie still, eyes closed as the slab slides. I remember Venice before all this. I'm reclining again against my husband in this narrow gondola, squeezing his hand as we skim forward beneath the low arched bridge. As I tried to figure out who I still was, memories helped, and this poem became a metaphor to me. Dark room in the converted laundry room. I'd flash a beam through the negative under the safe light's amber moon, wave to dodge and burn in, then whisk the sheet to the tank to drift in the sour lagoon. Await the black and white dawn, the moment to tong it out dripping when I would study the outcome. If it wasn't what I'd imagined, I could always start again. After a long time, this poem became necessary. So the title is Please Define Longer. In the beginning, my doctor replied, 1 year, when I asked how long I'd be out from work. But this morning, my wash-up mirror emits an alien visage of sour hue, drumstick clavicles, radiator ribs. It whistles, you look like your anatomy cadaver. As I'm here, my office dismembers itself. Fancy diplomas step down from the walls. Momentous files march toward discard. Grand books hitchhike to the library. Framed photos scoot off my desk. My Durham Society mug rolls into a box. Sleeves of monogrammed white jackets drip over the trash bin lip. I remember his answer continued, 1 year, sometimes longer. Mine was longer. So sometimes you get an attitude. A club for those of us who almost died. Come, let's gather to commiserate our losses, our jobs, our beauty, our freedom to act spontaneously, to travel without risks. We'll understand each other as we lament stunted energy and sex that, well, isn't. All the while, we'll agree that those outside our club only marvel we still exist and conclude it's bliss to be alive, or at least to look like it. Readjustment to living continues not as we imagined. We mostly wish no change would ever have been required. After about 5 years of this, I'm nearly 10 now. I wrote this poem. Victory Garden. In the glazed teal ceramic planter my husband received from his best friend when I was near death, the burgeoning Dieffenbachia beside the red-veined prayer plant blanches 3 blades weekly. And when those leaves are lopped, the blackening fingers of palm deeper in the jungle wither in ominous demise. Plants in general are heartless. I mean, after surviving 5 years, my husband's victory garden now threatens, and I feel I must keep us both alive for him. As I got freer to go out into the world again, this was an important poem. Retail therapy. Declared fit to shop for groceries. I heat my carriage with bulging bags, offload bounty to my car, coax my empty cart on the asphalt to surge toward the highlight of the trip. At the return stall, I plunge the cart into the queue in clattering collision, thrust it through the nearest basket's back, then ram the two to engage some strays, grating cacophony while I assemble those flung pell-mell by odd customers who don't appreciate how good this feels. I know people think I'm crazy, but it's really fun. And one other poem that became a metaphor, and this is my final poem that I'm reading tonight. There's lots more in the book. Rose quartz geode I found in the woods. It might crack open, that drab, warty stone, if I smacked it hard against a boulder. Might split to disclose a fist-sized cave of sparkling crystals. Flashing beauty I only later learned was wrought by sore time and moisture seeping to mingle minerals in hidden space, to squash a stack of what siphoned through cracks, to crush and compact a scintillating marble in a prolonged, pinching fusion of creation, like the ultimate reward of torment and waiting.
Oh my goodness, Dianne. Oh, my heart. Thank you so much for this. Whew, it's wild, like what we do here, right? Like as the publisher-author relationship of really sitting with these stories that are so much of your hearts, you know, the geode parts of that outer rock we call writers. And we chip away at these things. I know, I love it. It's beautiful.
The geode.
And, yes. And, you know, we help you to bring this beautiful creation into the world. And we're so blessed and gratified that and honored that we're able to do this with you, Dianne, and you, Rebecca. Like truly, all of us here at CavanKerry Press, we're all writers, so we know how important it is to really bring that idea to fruition and to bring that story to other people, because it means a lot. And we see you all put your heart on your sleeves here when you're reading, and we appreciate that so much. So please, everyone in the chat, please put some questions. We're going to go into a Q&A for a little while, which will just be a conversation. I have one question from Jonathan Abel, and then Gabe and I also have some questions there. So please put that down. I'm trying to find who said it. Hold on one second. It was Dianne Silvestri. Ladies, you both have shared such beautiful, personal, and heartfelt readings, and that's so true. It's so resonant. So let's go with Gabe's question first. We'll go with Dianne, and then after that, we'll go with Rebecca. And while we're having this conversation, these books, as I said, that make great gifts. They fit beautifully into little boxes. They'll look so cute under your tree with a little bow on it. So please think about getting these. And Tamara, if you could put comment in the chat box, if you could put links, that'd be great too. So Gabe, this one's for Dianne. Dianne, with a 10% chance of survival upon your initial diagnosis, I'm wondering whether I'm right in assuming your everyday is tinged with gratitude, and if so, how that informs and infuses itself into your poetry. And I'll also put the questions as I'm asking them in the chat if you wanted to refer to them.
Oh my, yes, Gabe, gratitude every morning starts with gratitude, and it comes back many times during the day. It actually helped me get through the long months in the hospital, because I was reading things that talked about gratitude and how it could help, and my faith and gratitude were what got me through. How it infuses into my poems, I've wondered that, because I think partly through a kind of an optimism that finds its way into much of what I write, or where what I write goes. Sometimes I think more gratitude should come in, but I find it easier to write through the harder stuff, the feelings that aren't as relieving, refreshing, encouraging as gratitude. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dianne. And Leslie, you also said that she's so glad that she was introduced to your work, and your courage and humor, and you have courage and humor with a touch of detail, and she hopes that you keep dancing. So just quickly, can you talk to us about the ballroom dancing? How does that give you joy, and how do you look at ballroom dancing differently now after having your experience? Is that something that's like a true like moment to moment thing with you, the intimacy and the closeness with a dance partner? How is that for you?
This is a really hard question for me to answer,
Mm-hmm.
Dimitri, because it comes very close. Yes, my husband and I love ballroom dancing, and we hope to resume it.
Mm-hmm.
Between two hip replacements in each of us, and now serious other sideline for him,
Right.
wise. We're on hold right now, but we talk to Olga, our wonderful teacher, every now and then.
That's excellent.
And actually during COVID, she still held online remote, and we'd have to roll up the rug here in the living room and try to have her critique our dancing by Zoom. So hopefully we will get back to that.
Yes, I'm hoping for that too, Dianne. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move over to Rebecca for a sec. Rebecca, even after all the years between your father's death and now, you speak with such tenderness that I feel he is here in the room with us. Can you talk about how the poetic act of writing, by paying special attention to the recollection of your relationship, brought you closer to him? Is poetry a means of immortalizing that which we most hold dear? That question's from Gabe also.
Wow, thank you. So how does the process of writing help me to hold him close?
Yeah, and did it bring you closer to him through the process of writing about it?
Yes, I think, I mean, in the book, there are some poems of my adolescence and of distance and things like that, but that wasn't where I was at with him when he left the planet. So I didn't necessarily need to have a like a return to him. But yeah, writing poetry is paying a deep attention to the world and whatever you're writing about. And so that kept him with me when I was spending that time working on these poems. And yeah, just the gift of being able to edit this book and have a new poem come into my life, to be able to think about that in a new way, that was something that I think writing the book definitely brought to me. A new way of thinking about that old thing that had happened between us, and even new ways of thinking about myself in terms of how I loved him in different ways throughout my life and our relationship. So yeah, I think just the ability to spend time and pay attention, and certainly processing the hard things, like Dianne, I relate to that so much. It's, I mean, when someone dies, or when one is in a life-altering situation, even if it doesn't take your life, it just brings you up to that edge, whether it's you or someone you are with, and you can't help but to feel a different sort of relationship with life, and to have gratitude. So it really is, we do forget to feel that sometimes on a day-to-day basis, or maybe don't feel it as keenly unless we've been through that experience with our own health or with someone that we love so dearly. And so that's, I guess, as I was going to say silver lining. I'm a very, my mom's here, and I bet she's relating when you were talking about positivity and optimism, because she, when I was growing up, she called me the positron.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. I love it. It's like so is it like a positive transformer?
Yeah.
The positron? Oh,
I don't even know,
love
were
that.
Transformers around then? Maybe they were. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, oh my God. It's definitely pink. It's giving me pink with a heart in the center. I love it. I love it. And its superpower is always having a half full cup. I think that's super important. I actually, and yeah, both of you are saying very real things. Like there's something, either subconsciously or implicitly, there's such a meditative practice when we start writing poems about certain things, because it's such a focus, right? Whether we're adding things, and we are trying to elevate that certain experience, or we're trying to just really hone in on it. We don't know that after that. We know implicitly after that 45-minute couple of hour session that we were sitting on just this one idea for such a long time. And it really changes the way we think about that. Which actually leads to another question by Shaheen Dill. Could Rebecca and Dianne talk a little bit about their artistic process? How does an idea for a poem come to them, and how do they bring that idea to life? So you could take that in the idea of this book specifically, or just how your writing is going these days.
I'll start to go short because Rebecca's been doing this longer.
Okay.
I know I look old, but I started it late. Actually, I was writing poetry already and having poetry published when I was a doctor, I'm always a doctor. I know I'm supposed to remember that. But I, didn't think it was going to be my career or what I spent all my days with. Anyway, my poems begin from ideas that sometimes need to just wait on a piece of scribbled paper or in my notebook, if the notebook's with me, until they emerge one day when I sit down to say, okay, I'm going to see what I can write into. So that's my process. I try to write every day, try to at least write down notes every day.
Mhm.
Some days, of course, are primarily revision, and which is also a creative process and a very long process often. But I benefit from pulling out old poems that never made it to completion and working on them, revising them to a point where they wake up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of waking up a poem, right? That there's like a draft just dormant sitting in there in our drives somewhere. And then we take it out and just wake it up. Thank you so much for that. Rebecca, same question.
Yeah, I love that also, the waking up of a poem. So in this book, I feel like I had sort of a different process than I usually do. So maybe I'll just talk about this book. A lot of the poems in the middle section, which is the section where my dad was actively dying, and that was really just a 7-week period when his cancer returned. It was the very beginning of November, and then he died on December 29th of that year. And I was involved in a writing a poem a day project for a local literacy organization here, the Center for New Americans, which is every November this project happens, and poets get pledges to write poems to go to this cause. And I am not only the positron, but someone who like does her homework. So I was doing this project, and I was with my dad in the hospital, and I was doing my homework. You know, I was like, I had to write something every day. And I've said this before about this book, but it may not have happened. I wouldn't have had all these poems if I didn't sort of force myself to write. Because I just think like I was paying that deep attention in the moment, and recording some things that might have been just, I don't know, the onslaught of that kind of experience, the emotion of it. I'm grateful now that I had taken the time in the moment to write things down. And it's not like they came out fully formed or anything, but they certainly were a record that I could go back to. So in terms of process, that helped a lot. I don't usually write every day. I would do that, you know, once a year in November. My birthday is also in November, so it was sort of a gift to the cause and a gift to myself to take that time. And I recommend that. You know, I did it for many years, I think 7 years in a row. And I wasn't going through traumatic things all of the other Novembers, but sometimes I was. Life ebbs and flows, and I found it fruitful when I was going through hard things or not, just to have that daily practice. So that's, I don't know, I don't write like that all the time, but I recommend it as something to try.
Yeah, sure. The ebbs and flows are definitely important, right? Like listening to ourselves and seeing what we decide to do. Like, you know, right now Diane's in a period where she's loving to write every day, and that's excellent, right? And then you are committing to the poem a day, but then after that it's a bit more fluid. It really depends on the person. I appreciate you both sharing that, and I also appreciate learning that you're not only the positron, but you also do your homework a lot. We're getting a full character profile of who Rebecca is this evening. I love it. Similar question to the process of writing. Stephen R asked on top of that, because Stephen was interested in the way both Rebecca and Dianne brought a poem to its end. So could each of you talk about the closure of your poems? Because y'all both had like really, I was talking about presents, making these book presents, but also the poems were also wrapped up like presents with bows, like right at the end. So how did you all come up with your endings for pieces? Did they just happen through a lot of editing and revision? Or do you have a certain kind of mindset about how to end poems?
Dianne, I don't want to make you always go first, but I feel like we're taking turns, but then you always have to go first. So I'll leave this one to you if you want me to go first, or if you want to go first.
Please do.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I like to stick the landing in a poem. There's another profile of me. I think a lot of times one can, write beyond the ending. Like I'll be in my writing group and we'll say to each other, I think the poem already ended, back back a ways. So I've gotten better at endings for sure, not wrapping it up with a bow and saying, look at me, I'm sticking the landing, but just kind of trying to have it resonate. I like to try to have poems open outward at the end. That's sort of an aspirational thing for my writing. Poems that sort of have an open door instead of a closed door at the end of them. Gosh, I'm trying to think of what I read that I might be able to speak about. Yeah, I mean, I have a thing about endings. I guess I don't know, I value surprise as well. So that whole bow thing, I guess there's a balance, right, between having something that makes it feel like that does open it up, that leaves a little bit to be still maybe discovered and still moved with the reader or listener, but not have it be everything packaged up and fully understood exactly. But yeah, something that feels like it, maybe a bell that keeps sounding.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I love that. Thank you, Rebecca. Dianne?
I'm at risk of repeating because she stole some of my, no. Well, I have learned the hard way, probably, how to stick endings, if that's what we're calling this. But I learned that about beginnings too. But basically, once I had some great teachers, and I learned how to just axe the first two or first three stanzas, because that was just throat clearing. Well, by the same token, I learned that I needed to stop sooner, as Rebecca has said. But I think my most important lesson, and the one I probably struggle with still, is not to end the poem until I have made a discovery that I didn't even know. Certainly don't ever write a poem knowing how it's going to end. I mean, that's probably where it should begin, and then you should write the poem. I mean, but that's been a very hard lesson for me. I'm kind of organized, very organized. I get ready for what's going to happen, but you don't do that writing as I'm now learning. So that would be the main. I would just say, keep writing until you surprise yourself or someone else.
That was beautifully said, and people are quoting you in the chat, and I'm also surprised about how both of you were able to answer that question, because that question was hard. When I was coming out with it, I was like, ooh, wow, this could go any which way, because I feel like we as writers, we kind of like even stumble upon the endings. We don't really know where the ending is going to go until we actually went through the whole process of the poem and got surprised, right? So we also have some of that surprise at the end, and we're like, oh, it's here, right? And then we decide to stick that landing. So thank you for that. Yeah, both of you, real professionals here. And you know what you do when you are on a chat with professionals? You mentioned their professional books by CavanKerry Press, these two books right here that look great under your Christmas tree. So definitely think about that. Again, we're narrowing down. We've been on for quite some time. I want to end with two last questions. And this one is from Jonathan Abel. For Rebecca, how many poems did you write before you put the manuscript? How many poems did you write before you put the whole manuscript together? And how many poems did you start putting in while you were compiling the manuscript after that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Is Jonathan the I know someone was here from Concord, and that was exciting to me because I didn't really mention this, but my father lived in Concord at the end of his life. So I didn't know if that was someone who maybe maybe knew my dad.
Yes. Yeah, maybe, but he is. Concord, Massachusetts.
Cool. All right, well, welcome. So this book started out not completely about my father. It was a book that I had sent out a lot to try to have it published, and it was in 4 parts. And the 3rd and 4th parts were about my father. And those parts were kind of roughly the middle and last section of this book now. And so the first section that involved my life with him and relationship and his life a little bit more came to be after CavanKerry said, we really like this book, but we think that it would benefit from having your father more in the book so that your readers can get to know him and then also feel that loss when he dies, because they also know him alongside you. And so, you know, the folks at CavanKerry, Gabe, most especially here, you know, no pressure. If, you know, we'd love to have your book find a home with us, but it's your book, so do what you want. And that resonated with me so deeply. So I went back to work on it. They invited me to resubmit it and see what happened. And so the first section of the book was really shaped after the original section that I was writing. And in terms of, I mean, that middle section I've already said was written primarily in those hospital weeks. The grieving poems were written in the first years, I would say, afterward. There was that one poem that I wrote and discovered what to say in the editing process. When I went back to create that first section, I really just kind of combed through everything that I had already written about my father. There was a lot of, in that moment before I sent it back, writing some new poems. And those came because I knew I wanted to write about certain places like the Arnold Arboretum and Lilac Sundays and Mount Auburn Cemetery. And just like there were things that weren't in the book yet, so I could think about places and experiences that I hadn't yet written about. That poem I first started with, Origins, was a poem that I wrote for that rewriting process, and it was kind of trying to encapsulate my father's, you know, write about his life and him as this vibrant person who's so a lot of memories came into that piece. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was I think that hopefully answers the question.
Yeah.
How I wrote to it and how it became the book that it is.
Sure. Yeah, there's no one linear path to a book, right? So it kind of like splinters and grows in a bunch of different ways. And Dianne, I'd like to ask you the same question. Like, was there an original iteration of this book? And did it evolve before we read it? Like, were there other poems you were tooling with that didn't make it in? How did you come to get this iteration of But I Still Have My Fingerprints, the one that you ultimately sent to us?
I probably took out 10 poems. Mm-hmm. And so part of the creation of this book and what makes it different from previous iterations, which I submitted over a few years, actually, as it changed its title and got its themes. You know, I figured out what I was doing. What am I trying to say? And so a lot of the poems also became sharper. Some became briefer. A lot of my poems are very short, of course. So it was many different iterations, but the basic thing was about the transplant. In fact, that was title on one of my early workshop versions that I worked on a long time. I think I got help in what to save and what to go from workshop, where, you know, my fellow poets would say, oh, no, don't take that one out. Or, oh, you gotta have that one if it's one I'm just about to put in the trash bin. And so that's helpful too, because sometimes what is my choice of a meaningful poem, you know, they think is kind of just light or something, not worth it. And of course, I have great gratitude to my first and best and last reader, my husband, who really, you know, told me if something just maybe could go, you know, that one might not be so good. That's
Excellent.
hard news.
Yeah, sure. Killing your darlings is
Yeah.
something I think we all have to reckon with on a day-to-day. So transitioning from killing your darlings, let's end with this last question on a bit of a happier note, a bit of a positron of a note, you may say. So Susanna Rich says, what place does humor have in you plumbing into some of those more difficult experiences? I think there's a great one to end on, especially because these books are so powerful and visceral even. So how does humor play in some of these pieces? What's your relationship with that?
I'm not sure which part of the process I would call humorous. For me, there are a few ways humor gets into my poetry, and often it's from noticing, even if the situation is great or grave, or the possibilities are pretty awful. If I see something that just seems really unusual or strange or bizarre, or reminds me of something else, you know, that is, wait a minute, how did that happen? And then that ends up feeding into a metaphor, at least in the poem, or a whole turn to the end that's light. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, I relate to that sort of the juxtaposition of things that just are almost ridiculous that kind of bring in the sometimes dark humor. I mean, I really appreciate this question. I worried that my book just had no humor. It's like, oh, this book all about death and grief and everything. And, you know, it is a heavy book in some ways. I think it's lighter because there's life in it. And so that first section that came to be and the rewriting of it, sometimes it's humor and sometimes it's just life as opposed to death and grief that gives it a balance. In my other work, I might have more actual humor. And I've kind of like grown to be okay with writing darkly or writing about hard things. I think, I don't know, I used to feel a little bit self-conscious about that or worry about that because I really appreciate humor and I don't want to bum everyone out and yeah, I guess it seems, I don't know, like I've said the thing about being positive and optimistic, but we've both said it's I think you just write about the darker things that you need to work out. You need to plumb them because you need to spend time on them because they need working out and figuring out and ordering, at least in a poem, because in life they're disorderly. So yeah, I think I won't say this book is the lightest book ever, but it's also not as dark and dreary or anything as I was worried. And part of that is just because it's universal, like death and grief is part of life. And I think people appreciate talking about it or hearing about it because we all go through it, and whether it's our own bodies or the people we love or something like that. So yeah. That's kind of speaking to the question, but a little bit coming from the side.
Yes, excellently said, Rebecca. Rebecca, thank you so much. And Dianne, thank you so much also. And thank you so much, the whole audience that's been here and on YouTube when you watch this, once this video is up. This has been Rebecca Hart Olander, who we've been celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Uncertain Acrobats by her, and also celebrating Dianne Silvestri and But I Still Have My Fingerprints that just released this November. Thank you both so much for such a great reading and such a great Q&A. I love these things. This is the last one we have of the year. This is such a great one to end on, but that's totally okay, because in 2023, we're going to be doing this all again. We're going to have other books. We're going to have other awesome authors. We're going to have more awesome books, and we're going to have more beautiful conversations. So at this point in time, Gabe, if you could just unmute everyone so they can all come on, say their good nights, say their hurrahs, and just shower, please, with applause. Shower these two with applauses. Shower them with blessings. This is really
Thank
amazing.
you.
Bravo.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Bravo. Great job.
Wonderful.